Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1144 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Jonathan, who has quite a story. He's had type 1 diabetes for 30 years, and he's had recently his colon removed. There's a lot to this story that you're going to be interested in, so get comfortable and we'll get going. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. And I have a unique opportunity for you to help people living with diabetes. Go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and fill out the registry survey. Just complete the survey and you will be helping people with type 1 diabetes. You might also be helping yourself. They're specifically looking for men right now, so jump over there and take a look. If you're the mother of a child who happens to be male, that counts just the same. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. U.S. residents only. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth is where I get my clothing, linens, and towels from. They are incredibly comfortable and temperate. I love them. I really do love them. And I love that I can give you an offer code that will save you 40% off of your entire order. Just use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout and you will save 40% at CozyEarth.com. US Med is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and we've been getting our diabetes supplies from US Med for years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or the number, get your free benefits check, and get started today with US Med.
I'm Jonathan. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I wear an ostomy, so I do not have a colon. And I started a nonprofit to help folks with chronic illnesses get outside safely and have some fun.
Wait, hold on, Jonathan. I don't know if you broke up, but Jonathan lives in a place where there's like 4 cows and a bird. So what you have a what?
So I had my colon removed last June of 22.
For fun? What'd you do that for?
Yeah, I decided, I love mountain biking and I love eating and I wasn't losing enough weight. So I figured, I may as well just start taking vital organs out just to try to get in shape.
Wow. It's called a colectomy. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, exactly.
Okay.
So I've been a type 1 diabetic for 30 years and just turned 41. And I had been sick off and on for a better part of a decade. And what I mean by that is obviously just running to the bathroom. So I love running. I love, like I said, mountain biking, cycling, anything to get outside and get active. And so I noticed more and more I was running to the bathroom. It'd go 2 weeks where I'd be running 3 or 4 times a day. And I'd go to the doctor and they'd say, you're stressed. You're too high strung. Relax. Take it easy. And that progressed over the years to the height of going about 30 times a day.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was no life. I still managed somehow to run sort of in between porta potties. And it got to the point where, I didn't have a life. I was incredibly sick, ended up in the hospital, actually with shingles. That was where things really went downhill. I ended up somehow with shingles, which then led to a diagnosis of sarcoidosis. And sarcoidosis is pretty rare, right?
No, Jonathan, that's the one. That's the one they use on House when they don't know what else is happening. Did you really have it?
100%. First of all, and I'll fast forward a little bit. All I want is a t-shirt, right? I want an undiagnosable t-shirt or something from Mayo Clinic that just shows like I'm part of a cool club that I'm Dr. House's undiagnosable.
I can quit making this podcast now.
I think you're good.
I mean, I didn't know this was going to happen, actually. Jonathan, I swear to you, and I feel terrible about this, I was so excited when you said that. I really feel bad.
Really? So, but I wish I was making this up, but I'm jumping around here, but it all makes sense in the end, right?
Sure.
I'm in the emergency room as I'm sick. They don't know what's going on. I've got shingles on my face. The doctors are convinced that I'm cheating on my wife, that I have an STD, which I don't really know much about STDs, but I was questioning how it would all show up there. Long story. And when the sarcoidosis diagnosis comes back, the doctor is literally holding a book, peering around the book to look at me, and then back to the book, and then back to me, and then back to the book. And he said, I've never seen anybody with sarcoid. I've only read about it.
Yeah. No kidding. Let's take a picture.
Great. I'm sitting right here. So can we talk about what do we do now?
Let me ask you some questions because I have already too many questions.
Yeah.
You're diagnosed at 11 with type 1. Do you have any other autoimmune issues?
It depends on who it's the whole gluten thing. They go back and forth on interpreting that. Mm-hmm. So I've never officially been diagnosed on that front, but I do tend to avoid it. Just, again, stomach stuff. But no, type 1 was just about it.
How about in your family? Any other type 1 or autoimmune?
Yeah. So my cousin, on my mom's side, he was diagnosed, maybe 2, I want to say, maybe even younger, maybe 1. And then my nephew a couple years ago, my brother's son. So that was rough. Obviously my cousin, I wasn't, I was older and he felt bad for me, but my nephew being diagnosed, that was a tough one. That hit me pretty hard for a while.
So you go from 11 to when does the bathroom thing happen? And I have questions about that too. Like, what age do you start finding yourself?
Early 20s.
So about 10 years into your diabetes. Then.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. When you talk about running to the bathroom, I'm so sorry I'm going to ask you this, but
no, please. I'm an open book here.
You get it, and you get in there, and it lasts for 2 seconds, 5 hours. How long are you there every time you sit down?
So I would meet a friend for a run every Friday morning, and this kind of summarizes my day. Every Friday morning at 6:00, doesn't matter what the weather is, you're on the corner to run. And so I would wake up usually around 4 and use the bathroom until about 10 minutes before I would meet him. And it would just be a constant stream of water coming out of my body.
Okay.
So, and then after I got back, sometimes I'd need that. So that was usually about an hour run, right? So then at times I would have to stop during that and go about halfway, or I'd get home and I would immediately dart to the bathroom, go again, trying to get ready for work, get to work, go again. I mean, so it's pretty involved.
Tell me something. You wake up at 4 and this is happening. It's a deluge of liquid coming out. When was the last time you ate prior to that?
It would usually be, 8, 9 o'clock the night before.
Okay. And now you're out for your run, but you get done, you have to go again. You weren't eating or drink. What were you doing during the run? Just drinking or eating?
Nothing.
And it just happens again.
And that's the thing. The only way I've always described it to people as being like a wrung out sponge.
All right.
It just, you felt dehydrated and tired all the time. It just felt like there's nothing left in my body.
Yeah.
How is this possible to continue doing this?
Well, minerals, hydration, nutrition, all that stuff your body can't be picking it up quickly enough when it's coming out that fast, I would imagine.
No, and the kind Dr. Houses of the world, I've continued to gain weight, which they still don't grasp. Like why? Usually people in this condition we see are skin and bones, and you're just retaining this inflammation. And that's where they started going was, hang on, your body is just so inflamed. Something else is going on that we don't quite understand.
I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience, and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while, actually for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com BetterHelp.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox, or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth, and right now I'm looking at CozyEarth.com to see what's going on. I got, look at this, bamboo pajama set for ladies, the jogger pants for ladies, looks like plush lounge socks. That's one of Oprah's favorite things. There's the bath collection. We love the waffle towels, but there's also premium plush bath towels. Everything that you see here can be had for 40% off with the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. Even the sheets. Now, we use the bamboo sheets. You may choose different linens. I don't know what you're going to love when you get to CozyEarth.com, but we sleep on bamboo sheets from Cozy Earth. They are incredibly comfortable, and I bought them myself with my own money using my own offer code, JUICEBOX at checkout. 40% off is what I saved. You can as well at CozyEarth.com. Okay. And so this was happening throughout the day. Does it, how long till you go to the doctor?
Very quickly. I did not I knew something was wrong. And so I had my first colonoscopy when I was 26. And again, it would go in spouts.
I thought you were going to say spurts and you stopped yourself, right?
I did. So, it would be 2 weeks of this, right? It would be 3, whatever the case may be, 4 days, and it would go away. And I go to the doctor. So, did a colonoscopy. Everything looked fine, but maybe just stay away from gluten, stay away from dairy. I have tried every single, you name, FODMAP diet. I've, only eat beans. I did that. Jump up and down 3 times on a full moon. Did that. And it just continued getting progressively worse to where, 2 weeks turned into a month, turned into 3 months. And that's where finally I was referred to Mayo Clinic.
Okay. Once somebody said, we have literally no idea what's happening here. So
exactly. Yeah. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Then what happens there that leads to, because I'm trying to understand, because I don't understand this at all. How does having your colon removed, how is that helpful for this? And how do you get to that?
It's a great question and still and one that's hard to answer, especially as my family still has that question. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't fix sarcoid. It doesn't stop anything other than running to the bathroom 30 times a day. So leading up to, when we first met with Mayo, the doctor was incredible and said, I'm going to be very upfront with you that this is the trajectory, right? So we're going to start with these sort of experimental ideas that we have in our research. And then we're going to go to more traditional, potentially infusion treatments. And then worst case scenario, which I hope isn't there, is surgery. That's where the most extreme cases go. And we went through 2 years of experiments and infusion treatments. So I was going to a cancer infusion center every so often for several hours for an infusion in hopes to slow that, my immune system just going haywire. And so it got to the point where none of that was helping. None of it was adding up. So we did every test imaginable at Mayo. And so they went in and did the final colonoscopy to take a look. And they said, your colon is just so inflamed and so angry with not only colitis, lymphocytic colitis, but also granulomas. We can see, we've tested it, and you have sarcoid throughout your colon, which is incredibly rare. So not only do I have this rare condition, but now I have another rare element on top of it.
A lot of times they say that sarcoidosis could last for years and go away, or it could end in organ damage. So,
yep.
Is that, do you just set a timer in your head and go, I can't do this anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. You're right.
Okay.
That's exactly what I did.
All right.
It was impacting every aspect of my life, from family to, career to everything. The top thing for me was family and outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I was carrying a shovel and biodegradable toilet paper, which I still do because of my bag, but I carry it. I was carrying it on runs in the woods, quite literally runs. And there's so many
bad puns.
So much
keep
fun
going. It's fine,
have.
Jonathan. Don't worry. You keep going. So you're like out there like a cat burying your stuff.
I'm digging cat holes. Yeah. You gotta.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I knew from a mental health perspective, if I wasn't moving in some fashion, that would be more detrimental than what sarcoid was doing to me. So I had to get out there.
So then my next question, and I really don't know the answer to this, but once you have that surgery, where does it go?
Yeah. So I had, as you mentioned, a colectomy. So I had my entire, I want to say 16 feet. I could be incredibly wrong on that, but it was a 9+ hour surgery, and they essentially took a piece of my small intestine and pulled that out through a hole in my stomach that they created just bottom of my stomach to the right of my belly button as I'm facing it, and connected an ostomy bag. So essentially there's a piece of plastic, just like a pump site, really adhesive, that goes around this little piece of intestine, which then you connect. You can have a 1-piece bag or a 2-piece bag. So I have 2 pieces. So I have a piece of adhesive on my stomach, and then I have a bag that adheres to that adhesive that kind of locks on it. And anything that I eat then goes right into this bag.
Okay, so it makes it to your stomach for digestion and for nutrition and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's not really, people are, oh my gosh, you poop in a bag. It's not. It's like, I always say, it's like half digested food, because your small intestine only does so much. So much. So it's not quite like what you think of, like, oh, he's carrying around poop in his bag.
I didn't think of that, but now that you're saying it, I am imagining it. So
yeah, of course.
It's
I've found that the stereotype is that people that have this medical bag, if you will, it's dirty, smells terrible, you're pooping into a bag, and it's there are some truths to it, but for the most part, it's not as gross as the internet makes it out to be.
You don't get any more of that like wash of just liquid running through you. That doesn't happen anymore. How about that?
So they removed not only obviously my colon, they removed my rectum, because my rectum was diseased as well. And so essentially they built like a small little, not really a pouch, but they just a small, little space, and sewed that shut. So they removed everything. And so there's no connection. It's a dead end, as I like to joke with my kids.
Wait, hold on a second. I can't take your temperature rectally?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is there an entrance?
I don't know. Yeah, I've got an entrance.
Okay.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Gotcha. It's just into like almost like a like if you were transitioning, the way they might create like a vagina. Like that. Yeah, like it's there's like a space back there, but it ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very quickly. So
okay. I got it.
Yeah, I always joke that I've got a no outlet or a dead end.
Yeah, how about that? That's insane. It really is.
It's wild. I mean, it's been over a year now, but I still have times where I wake up and I'm like, holy crap. This is the reality. I'm 41 years old, and I'm laying here staring at a bag that I'll have for the rest of my life. And Yeah, there's certain times of sort of heaviness that goes along with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's afforded me a lot. It's still a heck of a lot of work, but it's afforded me a lot of freedoms.
Can you remove it for short periods, or does it always have to be on?
So no, you can completely. So you have to do a bag change, and this is where the parallels to diabetes are there, because every person's different. So you can't really go and get the playbook. So I change my bag usually about every 2 days. I know some folks that change it every week. They're able to keep the adhesive in the bag sort of in good condition. I'm able to take a shower, and I take the bag off before the shower, clean myself off, clean the stoma, which is the piece of the small intestine that's kind of sticking out of my stomach, and kind of wash that up, and then put a new adhesive on, put a new bag, and you're ready to go.
Yeah. See, I meant sexy time, but that was a good explanation for that. So, like, can it come off for short periods of time for activities?
So sexy time, that's one element that frustrates me within, and maybe it's just because of what people are able to communicate on the internet, because I wanted to understand, like, how does it all work? And everyone says, oh, you just wear a belt. I'm like, well, nothing says sexy like bopping out of the bathroom with a massive medical belt on.
A bag around your stomach with a belt. Yeah. Get the lighting right. This is going to work.
Stand back. Here comes.
You just got to backlight me. That's all.
Yeah, right. Totally. And so, that's where it is frustrating from an insulin pump. Obviously, you take that off. No big deal. The bag is there. Yeah. And so that took me a long time, and I still struggle with it. It's there. It makes noise. Your stoma may make noise because you've got, you ate. And I'm very fortunate because, I've known my wife, our whole lives, and started dating when we were 19. So I just feel for people that are dating or may not have a partner or whatever the case may be, and they're having to navigate that.
Sure.
And I don't think there's enough conversation going on about, the bag moving around, while you're having sex, just addressing that. It usually just comes with, just put a belt on and you're fine. There's a lot of underwear, like crotchless underwear, that are made for women. I've approached as many companies as I can find of like, hey, would you be interested in making men's underwear? I believe they see me as just an internet creepo. Which now in hindsight, I could see like some random person messaging, hey,
dear sir,
but
or madam, I was wondering.
Or madam.
Yeah.
Right. But I've talked to other people that do make garments, and I'm trying to come up with an idea. It's just something that's just, it gets annoying. It's there, but
how many
I'm
people
grateful that
is there data on how many people have had this done?
Not reliable data that I've seen. So it's different doctors saying, and I don't know if this is accurate, but they say about 1.8% of people with sarcoid end up with it in their colon.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very, that's got to be a small number of a small number, I would imagine.
Truly. And my presentation of it is bizarre. And that's why, to your point earlier about House, that it's a disease of exclusion, and it's one that is not understood. And mine showed up on my arms. Usually if it's going to show up in your skin, you usually see it on your, what I've been told anyway, on your shins. And I had large granulomas showing up and down my arms. And that's what led to the diagnosis. That's how they tested it. And then finding it within my colon. It didn't go into my lungs right away, which is, again, bizarre to the doctors. I have scar tissue in my heart. So they believe, while they didn't catch it during the test, that at some point I had granulomas in my heart. And now it appears early signs are showing my liver as well. So it's continues to perplex a lot of people.
What are the long-term implications of that?
As you talked about earlier, the hope is that it goes away. I just restarted immune suppressant treatment, so we're hoping that keeps it at bay. It's going to take about 3 months for the immune suppressant to work, because we have to start with the cheap stuff that insurance will cover. your Humeras of the world. I feel like that's a lot of people have heard of Humera.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one that is an option, but you got to start with this one because, as you can appreciate, insurance.
Yeah.
And they don't know. It's difficult for me in a sense because, there's some medical professionals that say, hey, you had your colon removed, bad luck, whatever the case may be. We think you're going to be fine. Well, that's good. Then you talk to another doctor that says, I don't like the fact that your liver levels are doing what they're doing. I don't like the fact that we're starting to see the granulomas form there. And I think you have to have an understanding that we can only take so many organs out. And I have had a very difficult, my body builds up immunities rather quickly to immune suppressant drugs treatments. So Humira, again, you name it. And that, or I have an allergic reaction to them. So they said, you kind of do the math on this. You're not responding to drugs, and this weird presentation keeps attacking different, and that's my word, attacking, keeps going into different organs. So that gives me pause.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm reading now while we're talking. It's fascinating, too, that you don't have other autoimmune diseases, but you have this one. So in case people are wondering, sarcoidosis is an autoimmune disease.
Correct.
Yeah, and there's, like, the things I'm reading here say, like, look, this could be something that goes away to something that just, like, hits different internal organs and, it could kill you at some point. Like, so, like, there's any version of, like, severity here. I mean, it's got to be frustrating to say the very least.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because, much like diabetes, again, there's just there really are a lot of parallels. Oh, my uncle, he had sarcoid and he was fine after 2 years. You're like, oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. Mine isn't quite like that. My lungs, for instance, as I've mentioned many, many times, I'm just avid outside. And now while it is not sarcoid, and this is the next puzzle piece based on my last visit to Mayo this spring, I kept telling them, I'm not breathing right. Something is off with my body. I'm not responding the way that I'd like to. And I was told, oh, it's fine. It's just, you're still recovering from surgery. So then I finally pushed enough that they did some tests and a biopsy, and it came back chronic inflammation. So again, it's like, it's not sarcoid per se yet, or maybe it was at one point, but it is your lungs are chronically inflamed. And my question is why? And they just shake their head.
Nobody knows. Yeah. Well, listen, so for people who didn't understand my reference earlier, if you didn't watch the show House MD when it was first run, it was about this doctor in Princeton, right, who took on the toughest cases. Like, he was one of those people who helped you diagnose things that nobody else could diagnose. And it was a running joke, wasn't it? Well, it was a joke, I think, from the writers, that at some point they would either get to, like, halfway through the episode when they're all wringing their hands and they don't know what it is, someone would say, could it be sarcoidosis? Or lupus was the other one that they would go to.
Yes.
And then, by the end of the episode, it was never sarcoidosis.
No.
More importantly, if you Google, it's never SAR, it will autofill sarcoidosis and take you to just different old websites from back when House was first run, where people are like, why do they always say it's sarcoidosis?
Right?
Is this a running joke on House? Like, it would happen constantly. So anytime the word comes up on the podcast, and it has a couple of times, I explain this thing and make this joke. And no lie, like 3 days ago, I was telling my wife how it had come up on the podcast recently. And when you said you had it, I was like, that's not possible. People don't actually get it. They just... then I realized the difference between reality and television. But it really, like, you floored me for a second. And this explanation is fascinating. Like, I never understood, obviously, the depth of this. Yeah. It's really interesting to hear about. I'm sorry you're telling it from a first person perspective. Let me try to make sure I understand. You started with kind of like Humira, kind of like level drugs. When that doesn't work, then they'll push for something harder, and that should help the insurance company say yes to it. Is that kind of the path you're on there?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Much. Yes. And so we started with the free. So, I mean, I was drinking 2 bottles of Pepto-Bismol a day. That was Mayo had research studies that had the effects of Pepto. So I I'm just pounding
on inflammation. Wait, what was the Pepto for, Jonathan?
They had research with, and at this point, all they thought they were treating was colitis.
Oh, I see. For the colitis. Okay.
So they had no, and that's the amazing part in all of this is, and how sneaky sarcoid is that they had no idea, and it was nothing that they did. It was there and no one knew it. And so they thought they were just, quote, simply treating colitis. It was a lot of experimental, like, hey, we've seen promise in X, let's try that. And you're exactly right. So then let's start with the easier drugs to obtain. Let's get up to the infusions. And I either built up antibodies to it or I had an anaphylactic reaction to one of them. That was relatively scary. So we got to the point where, we're, like you said, we're at a crossroads of how much is too much, like, where do we draw the line? And I finally drew the line and said, beyond this, I can't do it anymore. This is too much.
Yeah. Have you had any therapy or like mental health help with it?
Yeah, I'm open and talking about, we've had we've had quite the adventure when it comes to health, and not only my diabetes, we have 3 kids, which we're fortunate to have. In between our second and third, we had 3 children, lost 22 weeks. And so that sort of started my mental health journey of, I didn't even realize I needed help at that point because I was struggling so much to deal with the pregnancy losses. And when I asked for help from a doctor, I was told, suck it up. Your job is to help your wife right now. Your job isn't to sit around and complain about losing a child. So I took that as, okay, just suck it up and keep moving. So I was walking around with what I thought was just plain, depression. And that's how it was treated for a very long time, until I found a counselor about 3 years before my surgery that found out I, in fact, diagnosed me with PTSD. And so it completely changed the treatment and the approach, because everyone just kept saying, oh, you're depressed, take these pills. And it was like, I don't want to just take the pills. I want to do some work around this.
Yeah.
I see a counselor on a regular basis to try to manage all of this. As you can appreciate, diabetes in itself is kind of a full-time job. And then all these other elements really weigh on me mentally.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't see how they wouldn't. Do your kids show any autoimmune issues?
Not yet. I was one of your guests a couple episodes ago talking about, if their child does something, they check their blood sugar. And we do that, if one of the kids is like, gosh, I've been drinking water all day. I'm like, get over here. Let me check you. So far, so good on all autoimmune fronts. And that was a hang up I had with kids, right? Like, I struggled with the concept, and my wife, I think, put it really well of, we will cross that bridge if we ever get to it. However, we'll know how to help. We'll know how you'll understand how to help them. And that gave her peace of mind. And she told me that regularly. So I felt comfortable, having the kids.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. How does all of this impact diabetes care?
The inflammation has been difficult. The insulin resistance, as you can imagine, goes higher and higher the more inflamed my body gets. So that's certainly been a challenge to find any patterns. With that said, I mean, I'm fortunate in that my A1Cs have, through a lot of hard work, have stayed in the mid 6s throughout all of it. But it's interesting because I see patterns where, my output, as we call it, not, pooping in the bag, but my output, if I am feeling somewhat dehydrated or my output, I'm putting out more into the bag on a daily basis than usual, I can certainly see a reflection in blood sugar. But yet again, I feel like there's not many of us. So when I collaborate with my doctors on it, they kind of ask me questions more than.
They're like me. They're like, this is really interesting. Like, great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Oh, I can't tell you how many research studies I'm in. Every time I go to Mayo, it's like, hello.
Hi.
Which I'm.
I have a grad student here that wants to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely. Oh gosh, it's like, yes,
I imagine.
Dr. Schmuckety Duck from Denmark is here. I'm like, bring him in.
Right. How about your your choices of food? Like, is there a certain way to eat that's more valuable for you than others?
Yeah. So after surgery, they recommend real heavy, starchy white rice, lots of peanut butter, which I'm good with. Anything that'll thicken up that output, because one of the largest challenges that you have is dehydration. And once somebody with an ostomy gets dehydrated, because your colon is really responsible for the bulk majority of absorbing foods, moisture content, essentially.
Yeah.
So once you take that away, then your small intestine needs to pick it up, but it can only do so much. Mm-hmm. It's only really designed to do so much. So once you get dehydrated, it's usually a trip to the emergency room to get an IV. That's kind of, it can go bad pretty fast.
Okay. What's like a regular day like, though? What do you eat in the course of a day?
So it took me a while. I stayed on that post-surgery meal. So it was, like I said, the rice, heavy stuff like that, removing the skin off your apples, anything, because what you're trying to avoid is getting a blockage. Mm-hmm. And if anyone's had an intestinal blockage, you know how much, it is excruciating. I had one, thankfully, in the hospital because my gut still hadn't woken up yet. So they were able to treat with obviously heavy pain meds and a lot of IVs. And that's the only way to treat the blockage for us. So I was feeling that pain. I was really reluctant to branch out of my food until one of the nurses at Mayo was phenomenal and kind of gave me a pep talk of like, you need to get back into, eating the way you want to eat. So unfortunately, due to the sarcoid right now, my mouth has incredible sores and inflammation all through it. So eating is really challenging. But if an optimal day, breakfast is usually some type of oatmeal or eggs and bananas, some type of fruit. I'm back to eating salad again, which I love. So a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables, lean meats, try to limit red meat just because of it's just, I've noticed for my output and how I feel, it's just harder on my digestive system.
Yeah.
So, a lot of fish, brown rice, things of that nature. So I'm back to where I want to be, but the nurse was cracking up because she kind of, again, gave me the pep talk. And then I saw her the next day and she asked what I did. And I was like, I went out and I got a salad and an apple with the skin on it. And she's like, oh, you rebel.
I'm crazy. I'm crazy. Get out of the way. Do you supplement with anything? Any supplementation that they've asked you to use?
So vitamin D and B are the only two from all the blood work that I give that they've had me supplementing with. And I've wanted to research and study other elements a bit more, but I haven't. So those are the only two that, outside of a general vitamin that I'm supplementing with.
Are there any benefits? Are you saving crazy money not buying toilet paper? Or during COVID, when everybody was looking for toilet paper, you're like, I don't care, I'm good.
Yeah. Totally. So when I empty the bag, I use a little bit of toilet paper just to clean out the sort of the bottom of the bag. So the bag has an adhesive roll, and if you look it up online, you'll be able to see it. So it locks in place. And there is absolutely no smell from the bag whatsoever when it's locked and closed. Now, obviously, when you open it and empty it, depending on how long it's been since you've emptied it last, there's a little bit of smell, but nothing. I find nothing horrible. But so I'll use a little toilet paper to clean that up. But with 3 kids, and I'd like to say we've saved money, but probably not.
36 minutes into this, I've sat on I've sat on this question as long as I can. Okay. Really didn't mean anything there by that pun. Do you have to like throw a Q-tip in the butthole once in a while or rinse it out or something? Or
it's a great question because, and now with I'm getting a little bit of, it's a clear, I don't know even how to describe it, like a clear mucus that is present every now and again, and I'll have to wipe that, and I can feel it. Like it just feels odd, and that's one thing that they are studying a little bit, just because I guess it can mine's happening more frequently. Mm-hmm. So they recently went. I was fortunate; I was able to go locally to do it. They just went in with a small camera just to take a look and figure out, and they can see colitis all in the little surgical pouch.
Really?
Yeah, super angry, super inflamed.
Oh, that's
oh,
I'm gonna curse. That's crazy. So what's the pouch made out of?
So it's the remaining skin that was there, and I'm sure there's a surgeon listening right now, like throwing themselves, like that's not accurate. But
they should get a podcast if they want to say their opinion. So why don't we replace it with like a real thick water balloon or something? I don't want to, like, I obviously don't know a lot about health and medicine, but like, couldn't it be something that's not your, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause
absolutely. Yeah. The way it was explained to me is that it is the safest route to go to essentially. So you have two options. And that's the other part that totally messes with you, right? Is once you decide, okay, you know what, we're going to do this. You meet with the surgical team and they outline your options, which are one, what I did, which was complete removal and no expectation of a reversal. Mm-hmm. And what a reversal is a 2-part surgery. It's called a J pouch. So essentially what they do is surgery 1, they go in and remove your colon, and then they give you a temporary ileostomy.
Okay.
They build a pouch out of your small intestine that essentially acts as your new colon. And that is able to hold waste. And just like your colon does, it's smaller, not designed to do that. So it's not quite as foolproof. Mm-hmm. So then you go back for a second surgery and they remove the temporary ostomy and connect you fully. So they connect the J pouch to your butt. You're good to go. Obviously there's a little bit of recovery, a lot of recovery. It's a tough surgery. And then you're, eating, drinking, living as you would. You go to the bathroom, you sit on the toilet. It's a little softer. It's sometimes people have a difficult time with their muscular control, so you can have accidents. With my diabetes, my recovery, not great. Mm-hmm. We decided the first option was the best for us.
Okay. Listen, it's not a well-traveled road to begin with as far as like experience. No. It's not like you can ask a ton of people what they think, right? So you're a little left with what the doctor tells you and what sounds the most agreeable to you, I would imagine.
Yeah, what fits your lifestyle? There's certain people I've met that say the J pouch was right for them, and thankfully they've had no issues. You see a lot of, they call it J pouch-itis, that gets infected or inflamed. And given my health history, for us, it just didn't make sense to go through. The surgery was wicked. I have vague recollections of the week that I was in the hospital, but the ones that I do, it was tough. And I remember laying there thinking, like, is this how I go out? Like, I was in so much pain based on how my body was not reacting, right? My bowel wasn't waking up. I couldn't use the bathroom. I couldn't pee. So they were having to come in and every time I had to pee and help me with that. So I was just, it was rough. And I was seriously thinking, like, this is how I die. Like, This is how, I can't believe, like, this is it. I was trying to do this surgery to help myself, help my family. And this is how I go out. And thankfully I got through that part and was able to, able to recover.
Yeah. And congratulations on not using the term "it kicked my ass" when you described the surgery. I thought that was because you had made a couple of bad puns already.
It was so easy.
Yeah,
I missed it.
It was there and you just sort of left it go, but that's fine.
I'll get another one.
I'm trying to talk myself out of, I have to say something so I don't keep thinking about it because I want to use the word. I want to say rectum, like rect. Like WRECK.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I'm looking for that pun somewhere and I can't find it. It's terrible. It's taking up a lot of my thought process while we were talking so far.
Well, I mean, we had a poop party, a farewell poop party. My wife and kids got poop emoji balloons and put them all over the house. We had neighbors, a big barbecue, all to salute my colon goodbye. No. So we're good with the humor. We need it.
I do have a serious question. Going to the bathroom takes up a fair amount of your life, right? Like sleeping. Yeah. You know how sometimes you resent having to sleep? I don't know if that happens to other people, sure. Right? But you're just like, I have things to do and things I'd like to experience. I wish I didn't have to sleep.
Yeah.
I know the rest of it must be so bad it can't possibly balance it out. But is it kind of cool not to have to do it anymore? Is there anything good about it, or do you wish you could just sit down and like, you know what I mean?
No, it's our son. After we explained to him what was going to happen, he said, "Dad, you can just sit and play video games all day and never poop. You never." I was like, not exactly.
How old is your son? I just want to rate where my thought process is.
He's 9.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm 52, and it's what I wondered. So don't judge him or judge me. I don't know which way you're going to go with that.
I thought it was priceless. Yeah. It cracked me up. No, I wouldn't. It was the right decision, based on the information that we had at the time, and that's a sort of a big thing. Again, as you can appreciate with management of a chronic illness, is, you know, my wife and I always just remind each other, more so she reminds me, which is we made the best decision we could with the information we had. Yeah. And so after getting the pathology report, it felt better, because I felt as though I was sort of making a selfish decision, that I was taking sort of a quote easy way out by electing to have the surgery, because it was, I made the choice.
And Jonathan, I got to tell you, that does not strike me as the easy way out, but okay. Yeah.
No, it was it was a strange time mentally. Mm-hmm. And getting the pathology report, and I read it, and I asked one of the other doctors, and I said, based on what I'm reading here, my colon was bad. And they said, your colon was F, and it was a matter of time before you had it done in an emergency setting. So you made the right choice. That felt good.
That's what you meant about once they were able to run that colon and look at the pathology of it, this was going bad one way or the other. You just kind of got ahead of it a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once that doctor walked me through what emergency removal looks like, I'm like, okay, this was a good decision.
Okay, great. So how do you manage your diabetes? You use a pump, a CGM? What do you do?
Yeah, so I use Dexcom and Tandem. I love the data. I manage my blood sugar through Excel forever, because I had my own crazy way of sort of looking at trends and doing all sorts of stuff. So having it now at my fingertips is sometimes a little overwhelming and pretty great. But that's what I use.
Okay. Using Control IQ or just manual?
Yeah, Control IQ. So I was a long time Medtronic, and no offense to any of the Medtronic users or lovers or anything else, because I was one of them. After my surgery, actually, and talking to my nephew, I wore Dexcom very early on in some clinical trials. It just didn't work very well for me during activity, and I just never went back. And once I saw sort of what was happening, I talked, my endocrinologist is type 1. That's what he uses. And he kind of just let me figure it out on my own. But I think outside of exercise mode, that's the only issue that I have on the Tandem side. I think it's still too aggressive. I have to set a temp basal. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, the Control IQ has been the best.
Jonathan, are you not getting some impacts because your food is skipping that large intestine? Because there's some absorption that's not happening now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but it has certainly been a new learning curve of how quickly food hits me. And I mean, you don't seem like you'd be offended by this, but there's times I won't tell my wife which foods because I don't want to ruin it for her. But I can tell how quickly, if I see it I can actually see the food in my bag, certain foods. If I don't chew it well enough, or if it's just a food that is difficult to digest, mm-hmm. It's coming out of my bag.
We don't talk enough around diabetes about like digestion. It's not spoken about. I think with the weight that it carries in the process, right? Like everything's just thought of from the side of the insulin, like almost like everything else is invisible and unknowable, and you're just trying to combat carbs with insulin. When understanding how these things are absorbed by your body and how that continues to impact your blood sugar, or how fat slows down digestion, so you see a rise, I don't know, an hour and a half after you eat a French fry, and you think, what's that from? It's because the fries have been just sitting there not being digested, and now all of a sudden they're being absorbed and you're getting the impact from the carbs beyond the time you imagine that they would happen. Like it's nobody talks about it like that. I guess it feels random and unknowable, but it's really not. And I think digestion should be discussed more, at least to the level where people could understand like that small part of the concept. I think it's important. Actually, I'm making a presentation like on my other, like I'm looking over at a different computer right now for a talk I'm giving next month. And I just added that recently to like, let me give a couple of minutes to this here to make sure people understand this part of it.
No, you're right. And I think it's a frustration point for many people, which I can appreciate, but no, I completely agree with you. From a diabetes education perspective, it's kind of glossed over, and you can really, I think, fine tune. Now, again, it's trying to find the patterns, trying to understand, if I eat peanut butter, here and don't eat, an apple, or I do, what does that do? And I think if you're able to have the time and that science brain to sit down and figure it out, it certainly helps, but it's a ton of work.
I think
and now it's sort of, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that at the very least, it can feel like someone comes up behind you and shoves you, and when you turn around, no one's there. So, like, at least understanding that you're not crazy and you are being shoved from behind, even that would just be helpful. Like, maybe you don't get to understand every impact of every bite of food and the different timelines they're going to impact you on, but at least if you know it's going to happen, then when your blood sugar starts going up, it doesn't feel so random, like after a meal.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
No, and that you're not crazy, and that I realized that I came up at a different time, and I hope this isn't the case anymore, but it was always, when I was a kid, it was like, what did you do wrong?
Yeah.
That was the mentality from the medical community, at least that I saw at the time, which was, your blood sugar was X, like, oh, you're cheating. What did you do wrong? And I really started to value myself through my numbers. So if, my blood sugar was high, it was because I was a crappy kid. Like, that's what I started to think, was that I was not, it wasn't that I was 14 and growing and, it was that I screwed it up. And I think there's just so many unknowns there with diabetes, and how, I always tell people, it's like, the sun could be in a different direction. The heat could do something like, I had a friend ask me, why don't you just do the same thing for each mountain bike ride? Like, well, I do I do, but I could have been stressed out. I may not have slept a lot last night. I might be, I may have had an extra, whatever the case may be, cup of coffee. Like, the variables are there. So I think that's hard for some people to accept. I know it was for me, at least.
Yeah. And again, I guess it just, at least if you understood that was happening, it wouldn't seem random. And then you wouldn't have people just, again, randomly assigning blame to things because they don't understand what's really happening. Like, let me just know that somebody snuck up behind me and shoved me, and I don't see them when I turn around. At least I know I didn't do something wrong.
Well, yeah. And I don't, looking back, I think it's also lost, like, feeling 300 is not great. Like, nobody wants to walk around that way. Like, it's just not a good feeling. So that's kind of what I always tried to remind medical folks. Like, I want to, I want to be in target. It's just, I'm confused as to why this is happening. Yeah. Having high blood sugar just doesn't feel good. Right. I'm not doing this on purpose.
You said you started a nonprofit for this.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah. So, my wife and I had sort of toyed around a lot with a nonprofit over the years, and we just didn't really know in what theme. And so I came back from Rochester, Minnesota, from my surgery. Came back to Montana, and obviously being in a rural area, I asked our hospital, can you connect me with other ostomy folks? Do you know any other ostomy type 1 diabetics out there? And I was essentially laughed at. So I actually had a session with my counselor. I usually run to my counseling sessions because it helps me sort of digest everything mentally. So I'm running home, and it was something that Tara and I, my wife, had talked about, something my counselor said. I was like, we need to start a nonprofit. If the support isn't here in town, then we need to build it ourselves, because I can't be the only one that needs help with a chronic illness. So Evergreen Adventures was sort of born from that. So we started it in one to connect the local community with each other from a chronic illness perspective. So I don't really care. I can't tell you. I don't know if you've experienced this. People come up to me and they're like, I don't have it nearly as bad as you. Nearly as bad as your child, or the case may be. And I'm not here to rate chronic illnesses. There's no scale. I want to help folks with chronic illnesses get outside in a safe and fun manner. Mm-hmm. That's really where Evergreen has played. We started a gear loan program. So if you're either a local in Montana or you're coming into the state to go to Yellowstone or any of our amazing outdoor adventures, you can rent, or I'm sorry, not rent, but borrow gear from us. Okay. So Big Agnes, major outdoor company, donated packs to us. We have Loner bear spray that we offer people, so they're safe out there. And I've been doing a lot of writing and outreach just to try to connect myself outside of Montana with other folks with chronic illnesses, but also just write about my experiences in the outdoors. Wow. With diabetes and a poop bag.
It's egadventures.org, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's nice of you to try to help other people. It really is.
I hope. Yeah, I hope so. That's
what's the hardest part about helping them? Is it reaching them? Is it like? Yeah.
I think it's the reach, as you can appreciate. Now, I have a public relations and a communications background, so this was somewhat defeating. I think social media is a beast, obviously in itself. So it was frustrating is frustrating to try to have a voice in that arena. So I decided to go back to the 1990s and start blogging again, because one, I enjoy writing, so it was cathartic for me. But two, I just thought, if we can help one person, if there's one person out there that is either managing diabetes or preparing to go through a surgery like mine, we might have some information that could help them.
Right.
And from the caregiver side, like from your perspective, I can't imagine now as a father, I can appreciate what my parents went through a little bit more. But from my wife's perspective, for 9+ hours during my surgery, she sat in an Airbnb and did puzzles to try to keep her mind. And she's the one that has to sit here every day. And quite frankly, as she said the other night, see me in pain because of everything that I'm going through. Having my colon removed, as you alluded to, didn't fix the problem.
Right.
So I'm still managing sarcoid. Sarcoid is still hurting me and really making life challenging. But I am stubborn to want to get out there and keep pursuing all these different adventures with my family and with other members of the community. But she needs support as well.
Yeah. How do you do that, though? I just interviewed somebody the other day who is, I don't want to give a lot of their details away, but their child is struggling, like really heartily trying to accept their diabetes. And it leads down some really dark roads.
It does.
And I'm wondering how you're staying well lit, I guess. How are you avoiding the shadows?
That's a great question. I think everybody does it at their own pace. This was purely by accident. I played college soccer for a little while, and my roommate on the soccer team was type 1, and he didn't want anyone to know and got really, really ticked at me when I mentioned it to somebody. I had no issue sharing it. He was far more closed off with it. And eventually he adjusted, but it just wasn't his time. Like, he was still managing it internally. Mm-hmm. And he had a great support system around him to manage that. So I think part one is having somebody to talk to, whether that's a parent, a friend, someone. And then part two is as a caregiver, allowing that person to sort of evolve it at their own pace, if that makes sense. Okay. And not rushing it to say, like, you just have diabetes, it's okay. I think technology has been obviously incredible, but it's also, to me, at least, made it seem as though diabetes is easy to some outside observers. That, well, you have an insulin pump, so it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's still a full-time job. It's still a lot to manage as an individual. So I would encourage kids and others to, one, not measure yourself by your numbers. Numbers don't dictate who you are or what you're doing as a person. And two, finding somebody that you can talk to. I have a buddy now that I ride with most Fridays and mountain bike with, and he's much faster than me, but he dials it back every Friday, and we ride together and just chat about anything and everything. And it is very much a mental health ride. Yeah. No, so finding something that offers you that solace. It might be reading, might be writing, whatever the case may be. But for me, it's been obviously running and outdoor activities.
Yeah. Trying to strike the balance. I guess this is how I should start my thought. Trying to strike the balance between not judging yourself by numbers and realizing that those numbers are helping you stay healthy.
Yeah.
That to me is, that's where the magic is, right? And like, if you can make those two things work, you're on your way. Because when you hear it go one way or the other, it's either, well, I didn't want to judge myself by the numbers, so I ignored them, but then had all kinds of problems. Or I made myself mental and like, but hey, my A1C is like 5. And you know, like the balance in there, that's the sweet spot. And that, whatever that balance is going to be different for different people. Because some people are going to be more hardy on the resilience side. Some people are going to be more, in need of more grace. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to figure out who you are in that space and put yourself in that lane. And you don't get the freedom to do that if everything that's being told to you is so black and white. And, I just, you mentioned it at the beginning of what you were saying, that I think it's just very important to figure out what works for you and not to rush it. It might take you some time to figure that out.
Yeah. And this may sound cheesy, but who you are as a diabetic, who you are as a caregiver. And, for my wife, when she was able to get the Dexcom app, she said, I don't need to look if you don't want me to. And I felt so good having somebody else being able to see my numbers. It felt like such a huge weight off my shoulders. I was like, no, please, let's download the app. And, so now if she knows I'm out of the house, she'll text me like, you doing okay? If she sees me dropping or whatever the case may be. And then she'll apologize later. And so I've had to tell her, like, no, it makes me feel great. It makes me realize that I got to remember I'm not alone, that you're here for me. And, but gosh, it took forever. It took a long time to get there. And it's, again, like,
I'm sorry, has she ever told you what makes her feel like she needs to apologize?
I think so how she's explained it to me is that she doesn't want to be overbearing. She doesn't want to be overprotective. And she doesn't want me to feel as though I'm peering over her, shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which,
is she like that otherwise? Is there a reason for you to feel? No, that's what. See, isn't that interesting? People who aren't like that are worried, like, oh, I don't want you to see me this way. Meanwhile, she's not doing it. Right.
She's the most easygoing and fun. But I mean, we've got 3 kids, 2 dogs, a rabbit, a cat. We've got a busy household, and she's unflappable. But she also we've realized over the years, she's also kept a lot of, and it's scary as a caregiver. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what it's like. I know when my wife was going through hospital stays, it was gut wrenching for me. So to have me now on a regular basis, every few months, I'm going back to Rochester for a period of time to be monitored. And we're kind of questioning, okay, where is it now? That has to be really brutal. So not only identifying who you are or how you are as a diabetic and allowing yourself to sort of find that identity and having a support system to do that, mm-hmm. but then also as a caregiver, the same thing goes. Like, what's your caregiving style going to be? And I think it's a two-way street between, and I'm curious as a parent how that works, but it's sort of expectations on both sides, if that makes sense, like what you need from each other.
Yeah. Also, by the way, we're ignoring the fact that you are flying somewhere to get your care too. It's not like it's, not like it's up the street from your house. Now, does insurance cover the travel?
No, that's been an individual that I think meant well once told me, well, you're fortunate that you have the money to fly. We racked up $24,000 of credit card debt in travel in 1 year alone. And I'm not flying like, private here.
You're not taking just a little charter jet for yourself.
Yeah, right.
No.
And so it's like, we hit my personal catastrophic max each year. We got another one yesterday, actually. Insurance company saying like, do you have secondary insurance? Because can you
please bill somebody besides us? Anybody? Have you considered it? No.
Yeah, right. It's and there's times where we've talked about it. Do we need to move? Like, do we need to move to a hub? Do we need to? And the answer is no, because it wouldn't change. It's not like I'm going every other day, right? And the treatment wouldn't really change. And so, but it's been a serious conversation, which is tough to have.
Yeah.
Of do we need to completely uproot everyone because of my health?
Right. No, I wanted to bring it up because to me it seemed like a major impact that just isn't going to get talked about. I hear people talking all the time, like, I got to drive an hour to get to a good endo. I'm like, you just said Rochester in Montana, and and Rochester sounds like it's in New York to me. And
it does to everybody else.
Yeah. And so I flashed back to when someone invited me to come to Montana to speak recently, and I was like, no.
Oh, cool.
No, I said, no, it was like 3 planes and a day of travel to get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I do it on Zoom? What do you like? They're like, it's beautiful here. And I'm like, I can't stay. Like, I mean, if I was coming for a week, that'd be great. But it was literally 3 planes and then a significant car ride and 24 hours of travel. And I'm like, I can't, I don't want to do that. I guess I could, but I don't want to. And it would also mess me up for my entire, it would probably screw up 10 days of my life as far as making the podcast goes too, because I'd have to get a bunch done ahead of time so I could travel, so that when I got back I was ready. I wouldn't be recording during that time. Like, it was a lot of reasons why I couldn't do it. But then I'm just thinking of you going back and forth for your medical treatment. But
I was on disability and I've left my career. I was a consultant for the federal government, and that I have found that I left my job last year. Gosh, only feels like last year. But last year, obviously, I was on disability, and then subsequently, I returned to work for a period of time, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hang mentally, physically. It was too much.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to leave, and that going from a dual income to single income is intense, to say the least. And now trying to fit that reality. And that's another piece that within the evergreen, within the nonprofit side, that I have conversations with people in town and elsewhere is, people are having to make decisions, right? People are having insulin, while the rates may have dropped and should have dropped years and years ago, everything still costs money, and people are strapped when it comes to affordable housing and food and everything. It all is connected, and I think that's lost a lot of the time. That person doesn't take care of themselves. Well, do you know the whole extent? Maybe they're having to make decisions on what they can do and what they can't do, which is hard to see.
You're a young guy who you're on disability, right?
I am now going through the process of applying. Now, obviously, sarcoidosis is not listed, as you can appreciate.
Those people didn't watch House, Jonathan. If they did, it would have been on the top of the list,
right?
Because they would have thought, oh, we'll never have to cover this. No one actually has it.
And so I've stopped making the joke because the doctors just stare at me, and I'm like, come on, House, nothing,
nobody.
You went to med school.
I was there. I saw it all. They might have been.
Well, you.
Yeah, they might have been busy learning about medicine while I was just watching it on television, in fairness.
Well, fair enough. But you should still have it. I mean, it's so I'm going through that lengthy process and painful process, and then trying to justify and trying to explain it is challenging.
Well, and then my next thought is, it's a loss of self, no? Like, part of I don't care what people say. Part of what you do is who you are. Part of who you are is what you do, excuse me. And if you just take it from somebody and not being able to put money in the pot too, I think is hard.
Oh,
right.
It's, yes.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife the other night, I was like, I said, she stayed home for a period of time, obviously with the kids. And I said, everything just seemed really well and flowing. I suck at this job. Like I think the kids want to go back to summer camp because dad's just not a good time. I'm still trying to figure out, because there's days. The other day I was in so much, and I'm joint pain, and that goes along with the sarcoid and everything else. And just overall, my body hurt so bad. It felt like somebody had a blowtorch in my mouth throughout the entire day. And so when my wife got off work, I slept for 3 hours.
Okay.
And so there's that reality too. And whether you have diabetes, whatever the case may be, having those conversations with your kids of like, yeah, dad doesn't feel great right now, so I can't go to play baseball. I can't go mountain biking with you. I have to go sleep. That's hard.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine actually. If somebody is listening to this, and they're like, I think I have sarcoidosis. First of all, you probably don't. But if you like, how do you get it diagnosed?
And that's the hard part. As I said earlier, it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So it's essentially you've run every test imaginable. Sometimes you get lucky, like I did, and you're able to see it on your skin, and they're able to biopsy and find that it actually is in fact sarcoid. Because that's the other part, is that when you say I have sarcoid, I knew doctors that I meet don't believe me. I'm like, go back into my records and read it. They're like, no, there's no way you have sarcoid. You're just making that up. I'm like,
when people will tell people, oh, you don't have lupus. Lupus isn't real, or whatever, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, you don't have fibromyalgia, like that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah.
No, very true. So I think and again, this is difficult, but I had a primary care and a wound care center that believed me. That's the only reason I got to the diagnosis that I did, was they knew and they trusted me and they knew that something was off. So they did not stop. They kept pushing and pushing. And then once the granulomas showed up on my skin, they were able to do the biopsy. So my advice is if you think you have it, hopefully have an open conversation with your care team, and as difficult as it is, don't stop. Okay. Keep pushing. The same thing with my lungs as an example. I thankfully had a doctor that believed me, that said, well, we don't see sarcoid there. But I told him, I said, I know, but there's something else going on with my lungs. So find a care team that you trust, one that you can collaborate with and push, and just don't stop and try your hardest not to be discouraged, because every doctor will tell you you don't have it and you're making it up. But if you feel like it's present, then you're going to have to be your best advocate.
Yeah. You just need to keep pushing.
Yeah. And educate yourself. That's the other part, right? Read as much as reliable sources.
Yeah. What is that? Like NIH articles? Like, did you have to go that far to figure it out?
I did. So I've read a lot of NIH. I trust, Cleveland and Mayo, and I know the money. They always say follow the money, and I know the money goes there from different drugs and everything else. However, I do have confidence in those two institutions, so I read a lot of articles and different studies from them. But yeah, you start to. I've got an encyclopedia that I use to try to figure out different terms, whatever the case may be. But research studies, anything by NIH, not just you name it, social media and Cousin Eddie.
Yeah. Now, I have to tell you, I mean, I've said it on here a number of times, but my son he was on his way to being diagnosed with everything except Hashimoto's, which is what he had, because his symptom was just so uncommon. Right. And that's how we figured it out. Like, I was online reading, like, when people say I was reading and they weren't, I was like, they're like, I've done research. I'm like, 20 minutes. This is a pretty long article. You got through it that quick? Like, I was digging through NIH articles about hives, and I hit it. I was like, oh my God, this is it. But then even once I had it, like, if you don't have a good doctor to go to, now you have the information, and that doesn't matter anyway. So, luckily we had a good endocrinologist that was already helping my wife and my daughter with their thyroid stuff. So I was able to go right to her and say, hey, look, I know this is crazy, but look at this NIH article. Look at what's happening to him. Can we just try the medication for this? And she was like, yeah, let's go, like, right away.
Right.
And and I think she even gave me samples to get started with before, like, so we didn't even have to wait that long. And
so good.
But if we don't find that one thing, the path they were heading him down was A, not going to help, and B, had nothing to do with what was actually happening to him. So it's hard, but you gotta throw yourself into it, you know.
You do. I mean, there's a patient library at Mayo, and so my mentality is when I'm there, I'm going to take advantage of every resource available to me. I've sat in waiting rooms for a full entire day waiting for a certain specialist. I will find doctors on their lunch break. So maybe I don't know, maybe I'm listed as, you know, a questionable patient, but they told me about their patient library. So I went, and it was just sort of like pamphlets. It was a nice library, but I said, no, I want the library. Like, how can I? So I had to swindle my way and get access to the medical school library, which I probably shouldn't be talking about. But
yeah, whatever. Right. It all worked out. You're fine. Nobody's going to get in trouble. Jonathan, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have? Did I skip anything?
No, at the end of the day, it's a complicated story. It's a complicated sort of disease experience. But from a pure diabetes perspective, I think I just wanted to retouch on the fact that obviously everyone is unique. Everyone has their own approach. And I think from a caregiver perspective, from a fellow patient, I just want to hear and sort of collaborate and share what I've experienced in hopes, again, that it helps one person or one person can help me.
Yeah.
I was able to be with my nephew a couple weeks ago, who's type 1, as I mentioned, and I was asking him questions. I don't know everything. I haven't experienced everything. We can certainly take a lot from each other. And I'm grateful for the community that you've built. And I think it's incredible to see. And that's really my aim with Evergreen is I want to provide information with no judgment and a safe place.
Well, man, it's a valuable, well worth thing to do. It's hard. Like you were saying earlier, it's making something so that people can find it is, I mean, you can say it's a lot of hard work, but sometimes I don't even know how it actually happens.
Truly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much randomness in what works and what doesn't that I don't know. It's hard to quantify. It really is. There are times I think like, I don't know, like, why is this podcast? This podcast is the most popular diabetes podcast in the world by leaps and bounds. And if you told me I had to tell you why, and if I was wrong, you'd like throw me off a mountain, I'd probably just jump off the mountain because I'd be like, I don't really know. You know, like, I mean, I can guess. Yeah. I know what I think I'm doing right, but in the end, I don't know. I have no idea. Well, why does one video blow up and another one doesn't? Like, have you never like looked at a video and thought that's hilarious, and it's got 8 views, and you think that's not like why? You know, like why that one and not that one? And it's just it's tough, man. But it's really worth
it's the relatability, honestly, and I couldn't obviously I wouldn't be able to guess why one blows up over the other. But what I will say and what I'm after is that relatability, because as a caregiver, as a parent, you know what it feels like to have, you know, a child with a chronic illness and helping manage that. Yeah. There's thousands of other caregivers out there that may not be in your same boat, but they can relate to maybe not sleeping great because you're worried about your child. I can relate to others that get low right before a test at school, or maybe get low right before a race, and it's frustrating, things like that. Man. So I think that relatability is invaluable, and that's what you're doing. You're providing a platform.
Well, yeah, but still, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, who knows?
I know, I totally do.
Yeah, this information
it doesn't make any sense.
Right. It could be rock solid and nobody could be listening to it. And I don't know how that'll, like, that's just. Like,
I don't get it. Yeah. It doesn't, no. And then you see something that's totally outside of your wheelhouse, but like something that's totally just ridiculous, and it's, you know, blows up.
The whole world
I put all this thought and time and effort into putting quality information together, and then this person eats a gallon of mayonnaise.
43 million people have seen it, and you're like,
yeah, exactly. Happened? And it's like, I'm over here trying to help. Yeah. No, that has come to my mind a lot. That's been a conversation in our house quite a bit, and I do want to I know I'm taking up a lot of your time here, but I wanted to say my dream, and my wife keeps reminding me. I said, when we got together and I said, we need to start a nonprofit. And she was like, yeah, you have a lot going on. Let's do it later on. Let's think through it. And I was like, nope. We had a 501c3 within 4 months. I raced through the paperwork. I wanted it. I still want it. And the reason I want it is, again, that one person. And she keeps reminding me, all you said was you wanted to try to help one person. But my dream is, much like you were mentioning, getting to Montana isn't always easy. But I hope to host some form of either both a kids retreat and or adult retreat of outdoor connectivity. I didn't mention how much mindfulness and meditation and all sorts of things play a role in my life. I need it. I do a lot of studying on meditation. I'm not, I don't excel in that area as far as my understanding of mindfulness, but I practice as much as I can. Yeah. And so I want to have some sort of a retreat in the great state of Montana to show and get people together that may not have the exact same condition, but something similar to get outside and enjoy and have some community together and learn from each other.
Yeah. Well, tell people the web address again.
So it's egadventures.org.
Right. Jonathan, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you do. And it's fantastic. Thanks for everything.
You're very nice. It's my pleasure. Hold on 1 second for me. Okay. Jonathan, I'm going to hit stop in a second, but I'm just going to leave a note to myself. Call this, it's never sarcoidosis. There we go.
Yes. I'm glad you're going that route. That's awesome.
Huge thanks to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% off of your entire order. A huge thanks to US Med for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Don't forget, usmed.com/juicebox. This is where we get our diabetes supplies from. You can as well. Use the link or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or call the number, get your free benefits check so that you can start getting your diabetes supplies the way we do from US Med. I haven't mentioned this much, but the new link in the show notes for Cozy Earth actually takes you right to a page where everything's already 40% off. So, pretty cool. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.